Greeting more. I'm with the Friends of Northeast Philadelphia History and the Northeast Philadelphia History Network. I lived in Holmesburg for 40 years and fell in love with Pennypack Creek and was always trying to figure out different things about it. And then I moved up to Huntington Valley 12 years ago, and I was finally able to figure out lots of things about it. I wasn't stuck in Holmesburg anymore, but I loved Holmesburg and still do, and get back there frequently. So let's get going here. My talk is on the 18th century Pennypack Creek mills, specifically the mills that appear on Nicholas Scull's map. I assume you can see this map the Pennypack Creek watershed. Nicholas Scull did basically the second, well, it was the third map of Pennsylvania. The first map was done by Thomas Holmes in 1687, and then Thomas Evans did a map in 1749. But this map is a little more detailed around Philadelphia. The Evans map is New York and elsewhere. But the 59 Nicholas Scull map is a great map, and the first map after Holmes' map. If you look at it, you discover that Pennypack Creek has more mills on it than any other creek, with the exception of Wissahickon Creek, which also has 13. And Pennypack Creek is kind of amazing in that respect. I had no idea that it would have as many as Wissahickon, or I figured that Neshaminy Creek would have a bunch. No, Neshaminy Creek does not. And Poquessing Creek is a relatively small creek, as is Tacony Frankford. Pennypack Creek is 22 miles long. Poquessing is about 10. Frankford, Tacony is about 13 or 14. Okay, so let's see about these mills along Pennypack Creek. Here is the Pennypack watershed compared to Poquessing, Tacony, Frankford, and Wissahickon. As you can see, it's much larger than the Poquessing and Tacony and Frankford. Not quite as big as Wissahickon, but it is going to serve all these people up in Bucks County and further up into Montgomery County. Now we're talking here 1759. Montgomery County wasn't in existence yet. It wouldn't be in existence until after the Revolution in 1784. So everything is all part of Philadelphia County, and for all intents and purposes, Northeast Philadelphia, though it wasn't known as Northeast Philadelphia. This is the full map of Scull's map, but we're only looking at the portion over here around Philadelphia. This is Holmes' 1687 map. This is Pennypack Creek running up here. Here's a little more closer view of it. You can see that they had, it was called Dublin Creek. Penn called it Dublin Creek. Thomas Holmes called it Dublin Creek, likely to entice Irishmen to settle. As you can see from the map, the actual path of Pennypack Creek goes well into and quickly, or relatively quickly, into Morland. Morland has more Pennypack Creek than Lower Dublin. But initially they thought it was going up in this direction, and consequently we have Lower Dublin Township here. This is Abington, also called Middle Dublin Township in the early days, and this is Upper Dublin. Upper Dublin Township still is in existence in Montgomery County. You can see the names over here on the 59 Scull. Let me get going in the right direction. Here's some other maps. I won't delay things with a bunch of maps. This is an 1861 map showing basically again, Pennypack Creek in relative to the same area on the Holmes 1687. Here's a larger 1861 relative to the 1759 skull. Okay, what we're going to do here is how are we going to determine who these owners were? There are, deeds is one thing. Deeds is going to be the main way to do it. Maps, wills, road petitions. Those are going to be our main resources. This is the 1777 map, Jim Duffin's map for the University of Pennsylvania. You'll see all these colored areas. This is Philadelphia County in 1777. Duffin has put together a fantastic map, interactive map. It's still in work in progress, showing all of the owners of parcels in 1777, right at the beginning of the Revolution. Obviously, Montgomery County wasn't in existence then, so our Philadelphia County is much, much larger, but Duffin has gotten way up into Montgomery County and also gotten down here into for Morland and Abington, and then Cheltenham, and it goes on, but we are mainly interested in this area here around Pennypack Creek. So each one of these colored areas is a parcel, and Duffin, if you go to the website and click on a parcel, you will find a reference to a deed. And then you look that deed up and you start researching. Reading the deed, find out what's going on, what went on. It isn't always quite that easy, but in theory it is. Quickly, just to go over what mills require. Well, they require water, so you're going to have to dam up a creek or a tributary, a stream of water, make a pond as a reservoir, and then in a controlled manner get the water out of the pond going to the water wheel at the mill. That is a sluice or just a race going to the water wheel. Here we have it. You can see it down here. This is an overshot water wheel. The water's going over the top of it, turning the wheel, which will then turn the gears. This is another more picturesque vision. We got a mill, pond, dam, and race gate. The gate will open, allow water through, or stop water. Yeah, that's the way you can stop the wheel from turning. And you don't want the wheel turning all the time. If you're not grinding anything, you certainly don't need the wheel to be turning. Here's some instances of how the water wheel works, the shaft going out of the water wheel, turning the gears. This is a sawmill here, very simple sawmill. This down here is a fulling mill. These posts, these boards will be lifted up by the cams on this shaft coming out of the water wheel, up and down, pounding the pounding the wool, which is called fulling. This is a grist mill up here, and most of these mills were grist mills. A couple of them are fulling mills, but almost all of them were grist mills. The millstone, you got the water wheel, again, the shaft, turning gears, spindles, turning the top stone. The bottom stone is stable. The top, you put grain between the two stones and grind away. This here is an oil mill where the stones are vertical and go round and round and crush linseed to make linseed oil. A very important part is the Hurst frame. If you don't, you need to separate. You need to make the works here, the grinding stones, independent of the walls. You don't want to attach them to anything that is attached to the stone walls, or the place will just fall apart. So you have what is called a Hurst frame that absorbs, kind of a shock absorber. It is a shock absorber. It will absorb all that motion. Okay, here we go to the lower Dublin townships. We have 13 mills. Actually, we have 14. There's 13 on the skull map, but I have to mention another one, but this isn't up later until into Morland. So here we are in Lower Dublin. There's 5 mills in Lower Dublin on the skull map. Here are the dates of them. Holmes is the earliest, 1697, and then we'll go on up the mill, but we'll start at the bottom near the river in Holmesburg, which will become Holmesburg, but not for another 120 years will that name come into play. So here we're showing how we get this information. Here's the skull map on the left. In the middle is the 1777 parcel that you go to online. You click it, you get this deed. The deed you're going to get is in 1777, and that's when John Holmes sells to Ellis Lewis in 1765. And it's in the Lewis family in 1777 as well, through a will. But this is that important deed that we want to get. It is Book I, Volume 1, page 326. And information on there is going to tell us about information going back. Frequently, wills, deeds, almost always, deeds will tell you what came before. And so that's the way we find out what came before. Going all the way back to 1695, Silas Crispin, Thomas Holmes' son-in-law, is also his executor when Thomas Holmes dies in 1695. And about 2 weeks after Holmes' death, Crispin sells to Charles Sanders this 240-acre parcel. Actually, he sells 933, to Sanders, which is basically all of the Wellspring plantation. Thomas Holmes, who is not related to John Holmes, the owner of the mill. Thomas Holmes had a large plantation at the base, a large estate, a large amount of property called a plantation at the base of Lower Dublin Township. Basically ran from Cotman Avenue to today's Grant Avenue, up to about Ashton Road to the river. So the eastern portion of that, southeastern portion of that, or southwestern portion of that, is going to be sold to Sanders in 1695, shortly after Holmes' death. Out of that 933 acres comes 240 acres that Sanders is going to, it's all in this area here. Sanders will then get Peter Dale to build the mill, which was probably built in 1696, though we give it a build date of 1697, because when Sanders in the deed for 16 acres of the mill common, which goes all the way up to the dam, you're going to have control of your dam. You don't just own your mill, you need to own the dam as well and the race. If you don't own that and somebody else owns it, then they can shut your mill down. So obviously you need to own all that property. Peter Dale built the mill around 1696, completed in 1697. Then in 1699, there is a road petition it'll eventually be called Welsh Road, but it wasn't then. It was just called the Pennypack Road, the road to the Pennypack Mill. John Holmes wasn't involved in it at that point. It was only Peter Dale. The mill was called Pennypack Mill. William Penn himself took a very strong interest in the Pennypack Mill. That road didn't go in right away, which irritated Penn. And he was, in 1701, he was telling people, get it done. I want the road built. The road was going from Morland, Peter Lester's land up in Morland, which is about where Huntington Valley is now, coming down to the mill, the Pennypack Mill now in Holmesburg. Also, another road, important road, the Tacony Road, which is not going to Tacony really, it's going to Frankfurt. Tacony hadn't become a place, the place that we know as Tacony in 1701. Tacony was Frankfurt. They are petitioning for a road to the mill from Tacony. Just shows the importance of this mill. It was a very large mill, 5-story mill, had 3 pair of stones. It was an extremely important mill. It was on tidal water. Pennypack Creek is tidal to Frankfort Avenue. So this mill is about a quarter mile below Frankfort Ave, and it's tidal there. So you can get ships up, well, flat bottom boats, not big ships, barges, small barges, bringing grist to the mill, say from Jersey or elsewhere on the river, and then bringing it back out. And some of it was being shipped around the world, as a matter, or at least to the Caribbean, and maybe somewhere else from there. But it was a very, very big mill, and important. As I say, Penn wanted it done. John Holm married Dale's widow, Martha, in 1704, and that's how it got into the Holm family. Holm then, as we see, sells it to Ellis Lewis. Ellis gives it to his son and wills it to his son, Robert and Ellis. Robert's widow, Frances, sells it to Joshua Pusey, and we see Joshua Pusey owning it in 1798. The other important tax, this is 1798 Dublin, Lower Dublin tax, Philadelphia tax, this was of Lower Dublin. There's also the 1767 tax. We're going to be looking at that on all of these mills, because that's the way we find out who owned it in 1767, which is fairly close to 1777. So it's an excellent resource again. I didn't mention tax lists in my first listing of resources, but tax lists are very important. Okay, this is an ad in 1795 for the mill. This is where the mill would have been. It's no longer there. No remnants of it at all. Holmesburg Avenue comes off of Frankfort Avenue. The race came down behind these houses here. These mill houses weren't there in 1700, but likely 1759, or at least a portion of them. So if you travel all the way down Holmesburg Avenue, you'll hit a dead end down here, and about 100 yards beyond that is the location of the mill. This is the mill in 1880, shortly before it was destroyed by fire. It's a huge mill, as you can see, but it was this size from the get-go. Nothing was added to it. This is the dam up the creek on the other side of Frankfort Avenue. You can see the gate over here that would have been open. The mill pond is back in here. The gate would open and allow water to go into the race, which then had to travel about a quarter mile. It's a very long race, but it gave it a good head on the water. It was dropping about 15 feet by the time it got to the mill, which the greater the head, the more powerful, the faster it turns, more power to turn the mill. Here's another shot of the dam from the bridge. This is George Castor's estate up here on the hill, Stonyhurst. Again, you got the gate over here. The race comes down here. This railroad went in about 1870. Okay, this is the road petition, the 16th. This is actually a opposition to the road petition in 1700. We don't like it going here. We don't like it going there. These guys are all complaining about it, but that's the way these roads go in. You petition for the road, and then some people come along and say, no, we don't want it there. And eventually it goes in. And Penn is irritated that it hasn't gone in yet. And here is his complaint of 1701, telling Thomas Fairman to get out there and get the road built. Okay, we're going to move on up Pennypack Creek, still in Lower Dublin. We're going to do these 4 mills up here. The Robert Thomas Mill, the Thomas Mill, same Robert Thomas, Peter Eaton, and Simon Thomas, who is not related to Robert Thomas. Okay, Robert Thomas Mill. This is the mill that will be, you'll see as LaGrange in Bustleton. LaGrange doesn't come in. It's a print mill, comes in 1840. So basically for the first 100 years, it's a grist mill up on at just, well, where Newtown Road is. In 1740, the Bustleton Avenue was the Newtown Road. It came, well, it was the Newtown Road. That's what it was intended to get to Newtown. It wasn't called Bustleton Avenue, though it went to the village of Bustleton, was at the intersection of Welsh Road, as we don't call it Welsh Road, or the Pennypack Road, and the Newtown Road. And that's this yellow line here. The mill is just on the other side of that road, the Newtown Road. We see it again here in 1759. Here's the way the deeds go and how we find that Thomas Canby is a mill builder. He's all over the place. He's up in Bucks County. When you see Thomas Canby, you definitely start thinking mill. They sell it to William Busby, was also had a mill down on, or I think Henry Busby. I'm not sure how William and Henry are related, but down on Tacony Creek. They sell it to John Atkins, and then in 1748, Atkins sells it to Robert Thomas, the senior, Atkins Senior and Junior, and that's the first mention of the mill in the 1748 deed, which says that John Senior and John Junior, or one of them, have erected a grist mill. That's in the deed. Well, if you figure that if John Junior was, he was going to have to get, I don't remember exactly when he was born, but in order for him to be about 20 years old and helping build this mill, it would have had to have been done towards the latter part of the 1740s. So that's why we're giving it a 1740 date, 1745, but we're saying just built 1740s. Robert Thomas will, so this is Thomas's mill. This is the lower mill. Also notice I should have showed this back on the Holmes Mill, but down in the 1798 tax, they will place where the mill is. This is the second mill on Pennypack Creek. The Holmes Mill was called the lowest mill on Pennypack Creek in the 1798 tax. So that's another thing we can see here, give you a feeling for the size of the mill and getting confirmation that it was indeed the second mill, and things start fitting together, and it helps. Robert Thomas sells it to his sons. Joseph wills it to Evan. We see Evan on the 1767 Lower Dublin tax. Christian Snyder eventually gets it. He has it in 1798. Well, actually, David Snyder, his son. We'll see Christian Snyder later on. Well, not really, because that mill won't be on, but Snyder owns a mill up in Morland called the Snyder Mill. Well, let's keep going here. This is Bustleton Avenue looking north. We're approaching the bridge here. This is obviously today's Bustleton Avenue. The road to Newtown would basically follow this path, which goes down to Pennypack Creek. So this is the way it looks today. Here we are looking in the other direction towards Philly. The mill will be over in here, quite a ways down in here. Here is a circa 1910 photo showing the fairly new bridge had been built at that time, and built in 1900. So this is maybe 10 years after that. This is the mill race right here. They are canoeing or boating on the pond, on the mill pond. So the dam is right here. This is another bridge will come in 1900. That bridge is this bridge, the 1900 bridge. This is remnants of the mill. It's butt up against that new road there before. That bridge had not been there. Well, actually, there was another bridge there, but for a while there was no bridge there because Newtown Road was downstream towards us. Here is the bridge that was built in 1769. It shows pretty much the mill. This would have been the 1740 mill, or maybe some of it was right again on the new road, which has the bridge. Okay. Next one up is another Robert Thomas Mill, and this is the first Robert Thomas Mill. It's the third mill up Pennypack Creek, but it's an earlier mill, 1724, probably built by Charles Hafty. Charles Hafty, another mill builder. We'll see him again. Robert Thomas may not have actually owned this mill. He was the brother-in-law of Thomas Livesey. Thomas Livesey will eventually get down to Wissahickon Creek and have a huge mill down there, and a big mill complex down at Wissahickon Creek. But at this point, he's still up in Lower Dublin, one of the early settlers, one of the first purchasers. So Semcock, well, it goes from Hafty to Semcock, and that's where we see the mill mentioned in that deed to Semcock. So we know that it was erected by 1727. We're going to give it a date of circa 1724 because chances are Hafty built the mill pretty quickly in order to get start using it. Livesey then gives it to Elisha Thomas, his nephew, the son of Robert. Robert was probably running the mill. He may have had a third ownership of it. Many of these mills had multiple owners. One guy couldn't afford it all, so they would basically sell stock and get the mill built. And then one of them would run the mill, and the other two would get some. Well, they still own 2/3 of it. And I guess that, I don't know whether that was basically their pay, having owned the mill or a portion of it. Elisha Thomas sells it to Thompson. Thompson sells it to Nesswanger. We see Nesswanger on the 1767 tax, and then also in the 1798 tax. It is in Nesswanger. Runs it for many, many years. Eventually, it's called the Walnut Mill. And it is on Crewstown Road, which had already gone in when the mill was built. So this is a fortunate, a rather rare instance of building a mill where there was already a road. Usually it was the other way around. They would build the mill and then roads were built to it. But this Crewstown Road, which it's called today, was the Meeting House Road to Pennypack Baptist Meeting. So the mill was right over in here. The mill race was coming out of here. There's a parking lot here. If you're familiar with the Crewstown Road to Pennypack Creek, this parking lot here, that race came out of that parking lot more or less, and it doesn't really have to turn that much to go into this storm drain here, and then down, that would be the race driving the mill, which is back in here. Here is the 90-foot bridge, if you're familiar with that area, the distinctive bridge, a railroad bridge, still in action, still active, a freight line, the New York Short Line. That's about built where the dam would have been built for this 1724 mill. Here is an early 1908 photo showing the 90-foot bridge, as we call it, the 90-foot bridge. I guess it's 90 feet high, though I think it's much higher than 90 feet. Maybe it's 90 feet long. No, I think I don't know why they call it the 90-foot bridge, but it is the New York Short Line Bridge. This is the Pennypack Creek Bridge over Crewstown Road, built 1800. It has been encapsulated in concrete here. In 1905, I think that happened. The mill will be off to our right, down in here, or probably over in here, rather. By 1908, these mills were not in operation any longer. After the Civil War, they were going down pretty quickly. they didn't know that was going to happen, but what happened was steam power. And there was no real need to be using water power any longer. You could just get a steam engine to run the gears. You didn't need that water wheel. So by this time, the mill would have been shut down anyway, though I'm sure you could have seen remnants. There's a wonderful reminiscence of the Walnut Mill, that particular mill, from the 1894 article, newspaper clipping. I won't take the time to read this, but if you go back to the recording of this, you can. It's very pleasant reading. 1894. This would have been in the final days of the mill. Okay, next mill up is the Peter Eaton Mill. Peter Eaton is a third generation from the Eatons who came over and founded Pennypack Baptist Church, and we are in that same area. He builds a mill in about 1747. I don't know that he necessarily built it. This is up in Charles Hafty's land. I wouldn't be surprised that Charles Hafty built the mill. There's seldom a way of telling it, unless it's in the deed, who actually built the mill. You only know who the owner is. Occasionally they will say that the owner built the mill, as in the case of the Atkins father and son. But the mill is there 1747, it's there in 1748 with this deed, so we presume it was built around 1747. Many of these mills, along Pennypack Creek, probably half of them easily, were built in the 1740s. That's when I think there are just enough, the population was growing to the point where they could support this number of mills. But this is one of the ones that was built in the 1740s. It will go through, various owners, finally get down to Hendricks, who we see on the 1767 tax. Then with a grist mill and 50 acres. And then we see again the 1798 Lower Dublin tax. George Potts has it at that time. Robert Varee had sold it to George Potts in 1797. You notice also on the deed it will say the fourth mill on Pennypack Creek. Okay, this is the area of that mill. This is Varee Road, the current bridge over Pennypack Creek. If you go, we're looking north. If you go down this entrance to again, Pennypack Park, since we're in the city, walk down about a half a mile downstream, you will get to the area. You wouldn't have any idea you were there, except to take my word for it, you are. In the wintertime, you can probably see evidence, not so much of a building, but the land is there. It's kind of open. You have willows and stuff like that would grow where there's a wetland. That was probably where the mill pond was. And that's the way you can see today, get an idea of where the mill would have been. And, going by the maps, you can tell pretty well too. Road petition, another road petition. This is 1764 going to, it was Hendricks Mill at that time, but it was the Eaton Mill earlier. So this is more proof and, nails it. This is the Simon Thomas Mill, the last mill in Lower Dublin Township in 1759. Simon Thomas is the son of Abednego Thomas, who was a founder, one of the early founders of Abington Presbyterian Church. This is where the Morris Gwynn Mill comes from. I'm sure that you've heard about the Morris Gwynn Mill. For years, the tradition was that the Morris Gwynn Mill was the first mill on Pennypack Creek, built 1686, so they said. This certainly wasn't true. Morris Gwynn wasn't alive then, but nor was there a mill there. Well, I can't absolutely say there wasn't a mill there, but the Morris Gwynn Mill is later, and it starts out as a fulling mill in 1716, which is early enough. That fulling mill is where it pounds the wool to get the oil out of it. Morris Gwynn, he is there in 1716. There's a road petition in 1716. That's how we know that there was a mill there. So this is the instance of a road petition showing us, telling us what happened before a deed does. And Abednego Thomas sells it to Morris Gwynn. Apparently Morris Gwynn didn't own the mill, or didn't own the land. Well, he didn't own the mill. He didn't own the property. Abednego Thomas did, but Morris Gwynn is obviously running the mill, so it's called the Morris Gwynn Mill. Many times, mill owners are not, the name of the mill is not for the mill owner, but rather for the person who is running the mill. And that's the case here, the road petition to Morris Gwynn's fulling mill. Okay, Abednego Thomas owned it. Abednego sells it to Morris Gwynn in 1728. Gwynn mortgages it to Joseph Spangenberg in 1748, and the grist mill is mentioned with 2 pairs of stone. That's a fairly large grist mill right off the bat, so you figure that probably was built a little bit earlier, and I'm putting around the circa 1730, somewhere in the 30s. Gwynn has it. He sells it to Simon Thomas, who is Abednego Thomas's son, in 1752. 18 acres and the mill. Thomas sells it to Bradshaw. We see Bradshaw on the 1767 tax. Bradshaw sells it to Vie. This will become the Vie Mill. This mill is on the other side of, the opposite side of the creek from where the Vie Mill will be. Let me just point out, this is the 5th mill on Pennypack Creek in the 1798 tax. Robert Vie owns it. This is Vie Road. This house here is called the Vie House. It's on the property, well, this is all city property, and this is where the Pennypack Creek Environmental Center is. The mill would have been right down in here. The creek is down in here. The mill was on this side of the creek. This, again, is Vie's house. Whether that mill was here when Vie built the house, I don't know, but the Vie Mill is over on the other side of the creek. This is the road petition to Gwynn's Mill, 1716. Like I say, if you want to look at the recording of this later and pause it, you can then read this. And these road petitions are fascinating, really, because you really get a feel for what's going on. This is 1716, and they're talking about different land, the owners, and the direction of the road and whatnot. If you're into researching old mills, these are priceless. Joe Minkovich is responsible for getting many of these road petitions, and I thank him very much. Here's that road petition. That road petition basically is Shady Lane going down to what is now Vie Mill, the road to Gwynn's Mill. This is an 1895 map. Here is a picture of Vie's Mill in 1907, colorized by Mark Bekansis. Wonderful job. Mark is an excellent postcard guy for Northeast Philly. Okay, we're looking downstream. This is the bridge over the creek. And notice Gwynn's Mill would be up in here, would have been up in here. Vie builds his mill, which is an edge mill, as well as a grist mill. He had 2 mills. One would have been the grist mill, one the edge mill. An edge mill puts an edge on an axe, makes sharp edges, put it on a hoe, put it on a shovel. So they were shovel mill, edge mill, almost synonymous. That's 1907. Here we are looking from the same direction. This is a different bridge put in the 1960s, the current bridge. But we're looking basically at the same angle. The dam is behind us, and now the dam is in front of us. This is the Mill Pond. This would be the dam. It's still there today. It's a lovely area up there at Pennypack Environmental Center on Vie Road. Again, the road, the Gwyn's Mill Road, these are some of the mills shown, the mills we've been looking at, the Lower Thomas, Upper Thomas, Eaton's and Simon Thomas's mill on an 1895 map. You also notice James Paul's Fulling Mill. This is not on the 1759 skull map. He just puts mills that are on the creek itself, and this is on a tributary, Paul's Run. But built in, it was there in 1739, another very old mill, obviously an 18th century mill. We could go into that in depth, but we're not going to. Now we're moving up into Abington, which was just goes through the corner of Abington. This is all Abington Township. In the very early days, it was called Middle Dublin Township. Lower Dublin's down here. Here's some of our, the Thomas Mills down in here, but we're going to be talking about these two. I want to point out, they're both owned by Fletcher. This is Fletcher's Ford. This is Robert Fletcher and his mill here, though this was a mill owned by 3 different people. I want to point out this is Huntington Valley Creek, and this is Meadowbrook Creek, flowing into the Pennypack. So this Fletcher's mill is getting a lot of water. There's also a very flat land up in here, so you can have a huge mill pond. This is an ideal location for a mill. And indeed, it was an extremely important mill, built in the earliest one, and there may have been 2, were around 1703, and I'm going by deeds. But the primary mill, which will really get a lot of business and get roads built to it, is built around 1709. How do we know that? We go to the deeds, and we see, actually we go to road petitions again on this one. The road petitions indicate that there was, let me go to the road petition. This is not the road petition I'm looking for. Oh, this is, let me back up. I'll get there. We're doing Fletcher's Forge first. We're not doing Fletcher's Mill. A forge has a little signal, a little symbol for a forge. Thomas Fletcher, it's only in existence for about 30 years, 25 to 30 years, because we do not see it on the 1798 tax. We do barely see it on the 1769 tax. That's the last year it was on. No, this is 1767. There's a 1769 tax, looks very similar. That's the last year we see it. It was built in 43. We can tell that from the road petition of 1743. Forge lately erected, goes through Edmund McVeigh, who is Thomas Holmes, one of Thomas Holmes' surveyors, and on down to James Paul. Paul and Fletcher are working together on a lot of mills. Okay, this is the mill will be, the forge is down off of down in a valley. Down, the creek is in a valley. The creek is, these are all cliffs around here. Creek is very low. The land is very high. This is Morland Road going down the Pennypack Trail. Here it is back when it had the rail line out, the Newtown, Philadelphia Newtown Railroad went by here, and this is, today you can walk down there. If you walk down a ways, this is the road petition I mentioned to the forge. This is when we know that there was a forge, and also exactly where the forge is. Again, these road petitions, these were drafts drawn back in 1743, showing where the forge is. And if you plot this out onto a current map, you'll see how it goes. You're working with Old Ford Road. which is actually Old Forge Road, but they misspelled it long ago and didn't correct it. So you can place that draft, the drawing of that 1743 road. This is Morland Road going up here. So that's how we know the mill, the forge was down in there. This is looking down from the creek, from the railroad down to the creek. You can see how far away it is. This would have been a dam, obviously. It's just remnants of the dam now. This is a tributary coming in. Probably Fletcher was using that somewhat to run his forge. If you go down there, you'll see these stones, and you know to take a walk further down the creek, though it'll be fairly difficult. Okay, we're going to go up to Fletcher's Mill, the other Fletcher's Mill, the grist mill. As I mentioned, the roads going to that grist mill are so important. This is a Welsh road, as we call it today. This is Huntington Valley here. This will be the Pennypack Road that goes in around 1701. Penn's complaining about it, get it in. It finally gets in, 1701. It goes down to what we know as Holmes Mill, but at that time it was Dale's Mill, the Pennypack Mill. In 1712, or even earlier, they want to put a road in to this mill. The mill is built around 1709. In 1709, really, they're saying we need to get a road down to here. Actually, what we need to do is finish the road that started in 1703. That is in the mill petition, in the road petition. One other road here that's important. This is also a road that's going to the Fletcher Mill. It's the Oxford Road. This will become 2nd Street Pike and also Huntington Valley Pike up here or down below. But it will go all the way up to Bucks County pretty quickly, 1710, 1715. So this is Fletcher's Mill up here. This is where you'll see it on the 1777 parcel map. Okay, Thomas Canby, who is I mentioned before, is a mill guy. We see him, we see mill, we think mill. He and Robert Fletcher sell to, they each have approximately 50 acres. They sell the Story to Thomas Story, who was a guy downtown in Philly who got the job done. This is early, this is 1700, 1708. He was the person to see downtown. And this is the deed number. And there are mills standing on both parcels. Canby has built a mill. Robert Fletcher has built a mill. They're small mills. Probably the Canby Mill, which is up in here, might have been on Meadowbrook Run. The Fletcher Mill was probably down here in this section. And that is where the mill will be that we're going to be seeing. And then there's the road petition 1709 to go to a mill that is lately built. But, it's there by 1709. That would be Fletcher's Mill. The petition in 1712 to confirm it mentions that a road was laid out 9 years past. In other words, 1703. They were trying to get to this mill from Gwynedd in 1703. They had not a very good road. They wanted a better one. And now that they've got this monster mill, huge mill again, a very, very important mill, they get that road built from Gwynedd to the Pennypack Mills at at Morland. It's right on the Morland Abington border. Paul is in there too. You'll see Paul. We saw Paul's run. This is the same guy, same family. Paul and Fletcher and Canby are working together in thirds to own this mill. Fletcher finally sells, part of it to Robert Paul, and all of it goes to John Hallowell. In 1783, we see John Hallowell with it on the 1798 map. This is the road petition 1709. Again, take a look at it later. It's an interesting road, a petition for a road from the Queens Highway, Frankfurt Avenue. It was Queens Highway then because there was no king, there was a queen in 1709, Queen Anne. So the King's Highways became Queen's Highways, and then when the Queen died, they went back to King's Highways. So this is a petition for a road from the Queen's Highway, Frankfurt Ave, to in Oxford Township to the new mill lately built in Abington Township. This is the Oxford Road coming, going up there. It also goes all the way to Thomas Perry's house. That's another story. Well, no, it's all part of the story, but it's an excellent part. But we won't get into it. We got to keep moving here. 1712 road petition mentions the 9 years prior. That's the importance of this, so that we can say, with some certainty that something was there were mills going on there in 1703. They weren't going to come down there for the just the pure delight. This is the mill. This is the old, if you go down Huntington Pike, you will see old Huntington Pike. You can go down there and get onto the trail. Now they've dug the rails up from the Newtown Railroad. You will not see this mill. It burnt down in 1907. A steam engine, the coals passing or embers passing from a steam engine set it on fire, and that was the end of that mill. It had been pretty much out of use then anyway, 1907. But we can still see the race, and I think this is built later, but this is that corner we were looking at, okay? This is where the mill would have been in here, and there's this structure. We're going to find the race going through here. There's no mill wheel or anything like that, but it's going to go under the trail here, the old railroad, and here it is coming out of that structure going under the railroad. This is the race, the tail race. There's the main race or the head race going into the mill, turning the wheel, and then the tail race coming out, going back into the creek. So that's good indication of where it was, and we'll stick with it. Here's 1759 aerial that shows the here's the railroad. This is the old road here. This is the new road will be here, but this is the old road, and the new road was built in 1936. The current road, but this is the old one, the one that would have gone back to 1709. This is the race. It can still be seen. It was a ditch going under the railroad. Again, this is 1891, showing the mills, Simon Thomas. Fletcher's Mill, this is a very nice map. And then Fletcher's Forest, Fletcher's Mill. Morland, we're going to Morland. Morland has the most mills. It does. We're going to start with Austin's Mill. Well, you can see here how many of them were built around 1750. All four of these, bang, 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 in the 1740s, late 1740s. And so that's what we're going to look at. Austin's Mill, Thomas Austin. He's shown as G. Ashton. I don't know why. He's not. He's Thomas Austin. There was never a G. Ashton that owned this mill or had anything to do with it. He builds it, or it's built. There's a mill on it when Samuel Boucher sells it to Thomas Austin in 1747. I don't know, but I suspect that Thomas Austin perhaps built the mill and was running the mill, and then Boucher ended up selling it to him in 1747. We also see it on a road petition in 1750, which we'll see later. Austin mortgages the mill in 1775. He was obviously struggling. He never did really get it together. I think trying to compete with that Hallowell Mill or the Fletcher Mill down there at the border of Abington and Moreland, trying to compete with that. He was too close to it. It just wasn't going to happen. and maybe he didn't know what he was doing anyway. So it looks like he failed. He mortgaged it, and then he dies in debt, and it goes to his executors who sell it to Samuel heirs. We see Thomas Austin on the 1767 map, but by Jonathan Austin, his brother, ends up. I think he was one of the executors, but he's listed on the 1798 tax list. The Austin Mill didn't do too well. John Walton will pick it up eventually, and in the 1800s have a very successful mill there. And this is where it was. You'll see this waterworks, Lower Morland. What was the Lower Morland Waterworks? I think it was actually called the Abington Jenkintown Waterworks. The building is still there. It isn't used as waterworks anymore, but that's where the mill was. This is, we're on Welsh Road, crossing the Pennypack Creek up here. Turwood Road goes up there, if you're familiar with this, but this is the area where it was. This is that road petition I was referring to, the road petition to Joshua Morris's mill. We'll be doing Morris's mill next. It was built in 1751, and on it we see Thomas Austin's mill. Pardon me, down here at Welsh Road. This is the new road that's going in. It was already Welsh Road. They were just tying into it. This will go back on Valley Road to Joshua Morris's mill. This is Huntington Pike here. This is Lower Huntington Pike. So we see Thomas Austin on the 1751 draft. This is Joshua Morris's mill, the next one up from Thomas Austin's. This is one of the few mills, really the only mill. It's now called Fetter's Mill, and it is the only mill that is really the owners have maintained it almost. It's not in pristine condition, that's for sure, but it has not been desecrated much except by time. I'll show you some pictures of it here in a minute. PA Gazette, who built the mill? I'm thinking Thomas Holcomb built the mill. Thomas Holcomb also built a mill for Joshua Slocum up in New Britain. This took some research, but you find it, and you put 2 and 2 together and you come up with almost 4. And so here's this ad in the PA Gazette, 100 acres and a new mill. Well, this land here owned by Joshua Morris is 100 acres. It's got to be it. Well, like I say, 3.9. That pretty much nails it, as the mill was built by 1750. And of course, we know that it was because the road petition in 1751 wants to get to it, Morris's mill. Holcomb, I don't know how, it was never sold unless maybe Morris bought it. These guys are wheeling and dealing, and you're not sure. Joshua Morris was a pretty rich guy, real involved in Abington meeting. And those guys, Quakers, could wheel and deal, and they did. And I'd say Holcomb just got kind of lost in the shuffle, built the mill, and then, was told to go elsewhere. And he probably did. While the late Thomas Holcomb, he went elsewhere. He was dead. But he built some other mills. So Morris to Jacob Comley. That's when we see a deed that lays it out, the property. And it's 35.75 acres. That will go on down. This is really important deed if you're into Fetter's Mill, which I am. That is the first deed where we see the layout and where the dam was, and on and on. That 35.7 will stay pretty much throughout the history of the mill up to, at least to 1797, 98. 1767, he's got, Joshua Morris has 230 acres, grist mill. There it is. This is that ad I was talking about from the PA Gazette. Twice it's in there. You'll see that Joshua Morris is mentioned on the ad. Go see Joshua Morris if you want this mill. Duh, he had something to do with it. Again, this is, I think, the same mill. Now you're going to see Walter Moore's mill, Walter Moore's name, Robert Thomas, he's in there, Jacob Leach. All these are fairly well-known people. Well, we will soon know about Walter Moore, and right now, pretty soon. 1751, this is the road petition, 1751. Here is Fetter's Mill Road. Wonderful old mill. It was enlarged in 1860. You see the seam here. This is the original part of the mill. It was enlarged by 12 feet in 1860. That's when they went from a water wheel to a, I can't remember the name of it. I'll get it. In 1760, a more efficient water turbine, much smaller, more efficient. Here it is, some other shots of it. This is the mill race came through here, out here, through here, going down to the creek. This is the back of the mill. You can see again there's a seam there. A wonderful old mill. I happen to live a 10-minute walk from it, and it's just a pure delight having it there. These dormers were put in the 1920s. Artists were living in the mill, and this was put in with a northern light, very helpful to artists. John Connor Ramsey was the artist's name. So that's still there today. Obviously, these are current mills. Here's one of the millstones. This is the bridge, which is currently closed. So anybody can walk across this bridge now and visit the mill. There's some posters in the windows to tell you about the mill. And if anybody's interested, I'll give you a tour. It might be a little, not real clean, but I'll tell you ahead of time. This is the basement of the mill. You can see some of the Hearst frame down in here. It's amazing. Obviously, the structure has been reinforced. It's 260 years old. 260, 70. Well reinforced by the Rivera family, Vince and Bonnie Rivera. Bonnie Rivera just passed away a couple of weeks ago. It's a shame, but they took excellent care of the mill. Okay, Walter Moore's mill, next one up. Walter Moore. Walter Moore's a mill builder, millwright, they're called. He gets Herman Yerkes. Yerkes family is huge. Herman Yerkes owns the property. He had gotten it from John. Well, got it earlier. Actually, Herman didn't. Anthony got it. Herman has the property, sells a portion of it to two-thirds of the mill, which Walter Moore has built a mill in 1744, or by 1744. We'll say 1743. Grist mill, dam. It's all mentioned in the deed. There's now a road petition to Walter Moore's mill in 1745. This predates Joshua Morris's mill that we were just looking at by about 5, 6, 7 years. The road petition for Walter Moore's mill, we can see that. That is today's Paper Mill Road. This Walter Moore's mill will become a paper mill briefly in the around 1900. Well, Longstreth has it in 1798 as a paper mill. But now we're talking the 17th century, 18th century, mid-18th century. They're going to put a road in. It's going to be called the road to Walter Moore's mill. Today we call it Pennypack. We call it Paper Mill Road. Moore sells it to his son-in-law, James Fulton. Fulton sells it to Harper, goes on down the line, and finally to Longstreth. We see James Fulton on the 1767 tax. Okay, we are going to go up to the next mill, which is right next door. This is the road petition that I was mentioning, the draft of it. So you can really lay it out on today's maps and see it there. There's the mill. These road petitions are fantastic. And again, thanks to Joe Menkovich. He goes downtown and scouts it out and takes photographs of it, and there's nobody else doing that. This is the intersection of Cathedral Road and Pennypack Road going down to or Pennypack Road. There were two sections of Pennypack Road. One is coming off of Byberry Road up that way, and then they go on down to the creek here, which is gated off. But you'll find the Pennypack, the Paper Mill Road Bridge, which is right here. A nice stone arch bridge built around 1840, 47, 45. This is a bridge. This is not the bridge to Walter Moore's Mill. This would be much later. But the bridge, the Moore's Mill will be over on this side. We're looking down. We're going up towards the trust. If you're familiar with the trust, coming down the road, we just came down. Moore's Mill will be over in here. Actually, I'm sorry, on the other side of the mill, down in here, and then the paper mill later on. This is where the mill will be, right in here. The bridge is right up here. This is Creek Road, another road to Walter Moore's Mill, put in a little bit later. This is an aerial showing the roads. A little bit hard to see. We're high up. Okay, keep moving. Potts Mill. This is the mill right next to Walter Moore's Mill. There's a road petition in 1748 from York Road, and I'm talking York Road up around Hatboro, below Hatboro, Willow Grove, down to Thomas Perry's new mill, which we will see later, down to Jane Pennington's fulling mill, new fulling mill. Jane Pennington ends up selling his fulling mill to Walter Moore in 1751. Okay? Exactly where that mill was, I can't say, but it's in this section. It's definitely in this area. And this is where eventually what is called the Shelmire Mill will be. So Pennington sells the fulling mill to Moore. Richard Hill sells some more land to Moore. Moore sells to Potts with a mill on it, a grist mill, not a fulling mill. So Moore has converted the fulling mill, Jane Pennington's fulling mill, into a grist mill. It's about a quarter mile upstream from his first mill. It will eventually go from Potts, and we see Potts in the 1759. He gets it from Walter Moore. Consequently, we see him in 59, and in 59, Potts sells it to Yerkes, at least half of it. Moore sells the other half to Yerkes. Yerkes sells the whole thing to George Shelmire. In 1787, we see Shelmire on the 1798 tax list. Okay, and then later it's a Shelmire mill throughout the 1800s. Very large, many mills running off of that mill pond. This is the area of Shelmire's mill. If you know Huntingdon Road, you can get to the creek. If you know this area, you can drive down here, but you can't park. But you can also walk up Creek Road. This is the area where the mill would have been. There's some nice houses here that are later. They weren't 1750, but maybe 1800, 1810. This is remnants of the dam. Here's the dam. The mill pond was up here. You can still see the mill pond kind of forming. This was the mill pond or the mill dam that Walter Moore would have built. Probably Pennington had a mill there, used the same dam. He may have built the original dam, and maybe the dam got bigger. The dam has been, it's still there. These are recent pictures. When the railroad went in, it tore the dam out. It was a huge dam across the railroad track. The railroad came in and destroyed half of it, at least half of it. This is the road petition to Thomas Perry's new mill. This will have that a mention of the Pennington fulling mill, and then saying here, Pennington's new fulling mill to Walter Moore's corn mill. Okay, well, read it. Okay, Perry's Mill. This is the mill that I had to add because it isn't really on Pennypack Creek, but it's a very important mill built very early, 1726, by Sampson Davis. It's on Round Meadow Run, coming out of Willow Grove. It's sometimes called Willow Grove Run. It was Willow Grove didn't exist back in 17, or not as a name, back in 1726. It will later be called the Morgan Mill. You can see what looks like a mill there now, but there isn't any. It's not a mill, and that never was the mill. Those might have been some storage buildings for the Morgan Mill, but the Morgan Mill doesn't come in until the 1800s. So Thomas Shute is another wheeler and dealer down in Philly. Sampson Sampson Davis is his son-in-law. They kind of work together. I think Sampson Davis builds a mill. Shute, hopes to make some money. Probably did. Davis probably didn't. A road petition, as we mentioned, to Perry's new mill in 1748. It goes. We see John Perry, who's one of the sons of Thomas Perry here. That Perry we saw back on the Oxford Road going to the mill. Same Perry. John Perry, 1767. Jarrett John has it in 1798. There's a deed to read all about that. Okay. This is a drawing of Thomas Perry's grist mill, 1731. I doubt it, but that's what the book says. But then again, what do I know? No one knows what it looked like in 1731. But this is an artist's depiction of it. This would be where it is. If you're familiar where Davisville Road goes into Turwood, Davisville will cross on over here and go on up to Byberry. It's going back this way to Old York Road. Where this would have been, the mill pond would have been right around in here. The mill would have been about where this building is, approximately. There's nothing there left. The creek, it's around Meadow Run, comes down here. Creek still goes into Pennypack Creek. It's all overgrown back in there and very wet, as creeks tend to be. This is the 1727 road to the new mill. It's another road petition dating the mill. It's got to be there by 1727, and you're not going to have a road petition to a mill that doesn't exist. This again is this 1891 map showing these mills going up in Huntington, in Morland. This is Lower Morland down here, Huntington Valley, and then we're going up here, Byberry Road, and we're going up to Hatboro. Emmanuel Dungworth. Emmanuel Dungworth is an early mill, 1719. Emmanuel Dungworth is Richard Dungworth's son. Richard Dungworth built a mill on Tacony Creek, we know of as the, come on. Okay, well, I'll get it. Oh, damn it. Martin's Mill. Martin's Mill Road goes to the Dungworth Mill. Martin was one of the owners at one time, and that name has stuck with the mill. Probably the longest owner of it was the Duffields, who are also down here in Frankfort. So Dungworth has it in 1759, built it in 1719. It's a very old mill, still there. The building is still there. It's been a restaurant and been many things over the years, and it is, again, a restaurant or an events venue. Dungworth dies as we all tend to do, and goes to his wife, Elizabeth. She sells it to Daniel Thomas, and we see Thomas on the 1767 tax. Here it is, Thomas, Mordecai Thomas owns it in 1798. Okay, it's also mentioned another road petition, very important. This is the Byberry Road, which goes in 1720, connecting Byberry and Horsham meetings. And it's the Byberry Road we know of today. It takes a bend there when it hits Hatboro, goes down Old York Road, and then another bend. It wouldn't have taken that bend unless it wanted to go to a mill. That's the theory. And that's very likely why it takes that bend there. It's going to go to an existing mill. The road went in 1720, or was laid out, surveyed in 1720. Consequently, we know the mill was there, circa 1719. Okay, there it is. This is Horsham Road. Again, this edition was put on some time ago, many years ago. It wasn't part of the original mill, but this is the original mill. It's very similar to the picture we see of the Holmes Mill back in Holmesburg, about the same size. This is a picture taken, back in the 30s. The old mill inn. It hadn't changed much. This is an earlier picture showing it on the creek. You'll see this is the sluice that will go into the mill wheel here. If there is a mill wheel at that time, probably not in 1907. Anything would be run by steam at that time. And this isn't really, that little addition that was on the other side is actually a machine shop. And that was probably where most of the business was taking place. But the mill stayed. Thank goodness they didn't tear it down. This bridge is no longer here. But it gives you an idea of the sluice. It's just now open and pouring back into the creek. The mill pond probably doesn't have much water in it. This is a 1905 Sanborn map showing the mill as a flour mill. This is 1905, so it's still in operation, probably running out of this engine room. Well, it shows the water wheel, so it's going to show it. I guess it's being used. So apparently it was still being used in 1905. Okay, this is our last mill. This is the Lucan's mill. This is up in Horsham. Jim Duffin hasn't gotten up into Horsham yet, but we can still find this parcel through other sources. Obviously, William Lucan's William Lucan's Sr. sells it to his son, William Jr. in 1763, and it has a mill. There's a mill. I don't know why I'm calling it a build date. Settlement of Horsham by Charles Harper Smith, excellent historian. Thinks it was built in 1940s, 1740s. I will accept that. He's very good. It was certainly there by 1763. It was there by 1759. It's on the map. We'll go with Charles Harper Smith's estimate of a 1743 build date. There it is, 1798. It's gone to Iredell. No, Peter Lucan says it in 1798. Well, it'll eventually get to Iredell. Oh, Iredell's here. I don't quite know. Maybe they were both owners. Well, there's Iredell. Okay, there it is. Except that's not it. That's probably built in 1860. It was a pretty big mill in 1760. The mill pond was back in here. This is Drescher Road. If you know where Drescher Road goes into Horsham Road, right around this corner. And then eventually we'll go down here to Old York Road. Actually to Easton Road, not Old York. So this is circa 1850, but it's on the same location, and it's a mill. It's now apartments. This is a map of 1798. 1848 map, Morgan's Mill, Perry's Mill, Dunmore's Mill, shown as, I'm not who the owner, Yerkes owns it then. And then finally we got Lucan's Mill up here. Lucan's is still an owner. Delmore's grist mill in 1848. That's it. Done. A new world record. Any questions?
There are two questions.
Okay.
Were asked online during your presentation.
Yeah.
Kim asked if the Walnut Mill article will be viewable elsewhere after the broadcast.
Well, it will be if you. This is going to be on YouTube, correct? Through Frankfurt Historical Society, and you can just go to YouTube, start watching it, and then hit pause when you come to that slide, and read it. I hope that it's high enough resolution. If it isn't, we'll supply you with one. It's an excellent little. It's actually, I think, online. I can't remember where I got it. I think I got it from Mark Bukanskas. But yeah, try it.
I guess Mary Ann asked a similar question, whether your slides would be viewable elsewhere. But yes,
same thing. Yeah, just go through it slowly.
And Kim commented she believes you can still see some of the ruins of Fletcher's Mill at the creek.
Well, that's that little house that I showed you that would have been over the race, the tail race. That is not really, I doubt that is, some of the stonework, yes, quite possibly a remnant of the old mill. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
Where are all these records kept? And it seems extremely important to have them and to keep them.
They are kept. They are online. They are, well, they're down. If you want to see them physically, you're going to probably have some difficulty because they're downtown in the Philadelphia Archives, which is a little disorganized. But fortunately, they have been microfilmed in the past, and particularly LDS, the Latter-day Saints, the Mormon Church, microfilmed a lot of stuff, not just here in Philly, but that's what we're working with here is primarily microfilms that have then been digitized. Those scans have been turned into JPEGs or PDFs, and you can find them online. The 1767 tax is online. The deeds, many of the deeds are free online, or you can pay to City of Philadelphia to get these deeds that are actually in the public domain and they should be charged for. That's another way. Wills, you can get wills for free. Old wills. New stuff you can't get for free, but the old stuff they microfilmed, and in the process, and now have scanned them, and all this stuff is available, and it's becoming more and more available. And Philly is just excellent. We've got such a great old history and have done a really good job of making it available. And then there's that Jim Duffin map, with all the parcels mapped out. Well, Jim Duffin has gone through the records for us and put the parcel down as it was in 1757 with the owner, shows us where the deed is, the deed number. You go find the deed. Hopefully you find it. Some of them don't have such a clear deed, but many of them do, and some of them are very difficult to read. And then in that deed, you read about what the owner that is selling it, where did he get it? And you go back, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 deeds to get back to the original deed, if you're lucky. And luck plays a lot in it, but skill will make the luck more apt to happen.
Is the Philadelphia Archives that building on Spring Garden Street?
Yes, it is.
I saw that.
Yep.
I read it.
That is the Philadelphia Archives. It can be difficult. So best to call them and tell them what you're looking for. But much of this stuff can be done online. But that's the way I did it. I have not been in the Philadelphia archives.
I'm just amazed how everything is saved, how it can be saved and all
Well,
this. And you
do
can
you know-
tell where it's deposited.
Do you know Adam Levine? Adam Levine has a wonderful site on Philly H2O. I think he changed the site. He's the water department historian, and he has a lot of great stuff there. And, you know, you can go from one to another. You get a little information and then say, okay, now I know what to go look for elsewhere. And, of course, books are nice. Read some books. But many of the books are online. I mentioned Charles Harper Smith. That's where I got that information from. So, yeah, there's a lot of resources out there. And again, Philly is very lucky. And we are very lucky. And Frankfurt is very lucky.
Well, I would say the Historic Society is very lucky to have you this evening.
Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank you.
your presentation.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say, if anybody wants to come look at these images, these are all mills that were on the Pennypack later than these early mills that Fred was talking about. So these are from our collection. It shows various. This is the one. I think this is the one you were talking about. That's Fletcher's Mill. Is that right? Is that Fletcher's Mill?
Yes, that's Fletcher's Mill. Yeah, nice shot of it.
That's the one that you can go visit.
Who do we think took that?
Pardon?
Who do we think took that? Cartilage?
These are in cartilage.
Are they all cartilage?
No.
Oh, okay.
These two are.
Okay. I'm going to close this.